Hello, and here we are at the start of the third tour, this time the Scottish borders. As you can see from the map, the English side of the border mostly has a natural boundary of moorland and hills and not many settlements. The towns and villages on the English side of the border we've already visited in the previous two films. Places such as Wooler, Ford, Etal, Otterburn, Bellingham and Berwick. The places we will visit this time will be on the Scottish side of the border, and we will be travelling from the west side over to the east. It is commonly thought that the Roman occupation only went as far north as Hadrian's Wall. But in fact, the Romans invaded Scotland many times and established camps and forts as far north as Perthshire. In fact, the Romans built another wall known as the Antonine Wall, and it was built AD 142, which was 20 years after Hadrian's Wall. It was ordered by the Emperor Antoninus, and it stretched from Glasgow in the west to Edinburgh in the east. We begin the tour here in Annan, which lies on the northern and eastern edge of the Solway Firth, which you can see behind me, and in turn is the mouth of both the rivers Esk and Eden. The fords, or waths as they were locally known, crossed the Solway Firth here and were used by invading armies for more than 2,000 years to get into the valley routes north through Annandale and Eskdale. Roman fortifications were built in Annandale to secure the roads north from Hadrian's Wall to the Antonine Wall. By the 13th century, Annandale belonged to the Bruce family, who along with William Wallace struggled for Scottish independence. And for 100 years, Annan, as well as most of the border towns, suffered the consequences of warfare between England and Scotland. Even in the 200 years of peace, lands on both sides of the border were subjected to raids and counter-raids by the powerful families that owned them to steal cattle and anything movable. They were known as the Border Reivers. The past 250 years have seen peaceful agricultural development, shipbuilding and engineering. Annan became a market town, and in the 19th century saw schooners and tea clippers built here. Today only a few fishing boats remain, some engineering, and most are employed in the nuclear industry and food processing. The agriculture has largely given way to forestry, and the red sandstone that you see in all of the buildings here is quarried locally. The village of Gretna lies right on the border and is world famous for its runaway marriages at Gretna Green. It all began in 1754 when a new law in England prevented couples under the age of 21 from marrying without their parents' consent. The marriage had to be in a church and witnessed by a formal gathering. In Scotland, anyone 15 or over could marry and no one else needed to be present. So because Gretna was literally just across the border, it was the first and easiest place for people to reach. English couples wanted some formality and looked for someone in authority to preside over their wedding. The most respected artisan in the Scottish countryside at that time was the blacksmith, and he would strike the anvil to seal the marriage. And so the legend began, and today people come from all over the world to be married at Gretna. Lockerbie dates back to 1194 and was little more than a tower house and row of cottages until the mid-1700s, when it became a well-known centre for trading lambs. Bonnie Prince Charlie is claimed to have stayed here in 1745 on his way to claim the throne of England. The main road from England to Scotland used to come through the town, which contributed to its growth. In the 1960s, the town was bypassed, and Lockerbie today is a quiet place. In 1988, it was the scene of a terror attack when a Pan Am jet was bombed and fell on the town, killing a total of 270 people. This memorial garden was created in memory of them. Langham is known to the Scots as Muckletown, muckle meaning large. The River Esk runs through the town and it is the seat of the Armstrong clan, its most famous descendant being Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon. The Scottish poet Hugh MacDiarmid was also born here, and the well-known retail chain Edinburgh Woolen Mill was founded in Langham in 1946. The town used to have 22 textile mills at one time, most of which have now closed. Langham hosts an annual arts and music festival and is believed to have the oldest brass band in Scotland, as well as a pipe band. Various museums and archaeological sites make it a very interesting place to visit. The surrounding hills and countryside of Eskdale are very picturesque. Newcastleton lies on the River Liddel, just north of the border, and was built as a consequence of the land clearances in the 1790s, when people were forced to move from Old Castle Village. Today Newcastleton is mostly known for its annual folk festival, when performers and musicians from far and wide come to celebrate traditional folk music. Hermitage Castle is thought to get its name from the French word for guardhouse, l'Hermitage, and built around 1240 in a Norman style. The castle was known as the guardhouse in the bloodiest valley in Britain. The Scots regularly allied with the French against the English, of course, over the centuries. Howick lies at the junction of two rivers, the Slitrig and the Teviot. The water power provided by the rivers were the main reason Howick grew to be the largest border town. It dates back to a settlement founded by the Angles in 600 AD. In 1100, after the Norman invasion of 1066, a motte was built here. A motte is a large wooden or stone tower, usually on high ground. The town suffered badly in the cross-border wars with England between 1300 and the 1500s. In 1513, most of the men of Howick were killed at the Battle of Flodden, and during a raid by the English a year later, the town had to be defended by teenage boys. The event is commemorated by a statue, and the annual event of common riding, where several hundred riders gather to ride around the boundaries of the borough. The last few hundred years, Howick became a busy textile town, producing woolen garments, rugs and carpets. In the 1800s, the railway meant Howick was connected to Edinburgh and Carlisle, and the trade in livestock became another source of prosperity. Most of that is gone now, but Howick still remains an attractive, busy town, and in 2018 became the home to the Borders Distillery, the first legal whisky distillery to operate in the Borders since 1837. Recent heavy rains has obviously devastated this property. Jedburgh is a border town on the River Jed and was originally known as Jedworth, or enclosed settlement on the Jed. The word worth was later changed to the more popular word borough. A church was founded here by Bishop Ecgfrith of Lindisfarne around 830 AD. David I of Scotland made it a priory around 1120, housing Augustinian monks from France. Over the next centuries it became one of the largest and most important monasteries in Scotland. The border wars of the 1500s left it in ruin. The original castle in Jedburgh was built in 1174, but lost to the English during one of the border conflicts. The Scots, having gained repossession of it, demolished it in 1409 to stop the English taking it back. In 1820, a jail was built on the site, which was closed again in 1868. Today it has been restored and open to the public as a museum. Mary Queen of Scots stayed here in 1566 to preside over a circuit court. Her close friend, the Earl of Bothwell, lay injured some 20 miles away at the Hermitage near Newcastleton, and she rode in atrocious weather to be by his side. She contracted a serious illness and on her return was near death. She did survive, only to be later executed by her cousin Queen Elizabeth I. Today Jedburgh is on one of the main routes to Scotland and has a very busy tourist industry with its many historic buildings and features. Kelso lies at the confluence or the junction where the River Teviot flows into the River Tweed, which you can see just behind me. This market town in the Borders owes its existence to the abbey built here in 1128. Before the abbey was built, Kelso was called Corcu because it sat on a chalk outcrop of rock. In 1113, King David I of Scotland brought a number of Benedictine monks from Chartres in France in an effort to revive the Catholic religion in Scotland. The monks documented the history here from 1113 to 1567 in a collection of documents called the Kelso Liber, Liber meaning book. The monks were skilled craftsmen and passed their skills on to the local people, which helped it to grow and prosper. After Henry VIII's Reformation in the 1500s, the abbey fell into decline and so did the area around it. Kelso and most of the land around it became the property of the Kerr family. Charles Stuart, or Bonnie Prince Charlie, stayed here on his way to Carlisle in 1745 during his campaign to claim the English throne. Kelso Bridge was built in 1804 and was designed by John Rennie, who later went on to design the London Bridge. Coldstream sits right on the border with England, separated only by the River Tweed. It is where Edward I, otherwise known as Edward the Longshanks, invaded Scotland in 1296. In 1316, Sir James Douglas defeated the English here during the Battle of Skaithmuir in the Wars of Independence. Following the English Civil War, General George Monk established the Coldstream Guards here in 1650, a new model army available to fight anywhere in the United Kingdom. The Coldstream Guards helped to restore Charles II to the throne in 1660 after Cromwell's death. Today the Coldstream Guards remain a principal regiment in the British Army and the Household Division, appearing regularly on royal occasions. The museum building you can see here replaced the house that was believed to be the headquarters of General Monk in 1660. In the 17 and 1800s, Coldstream became popular with runaway marriages just like Gretna, and it was because it was so close to the English border. Eyemouth lies at the mouth of the River Eye, and today is a very picturesque fishing port and a very, very strong smell of fish. In its history, it was the focus of English pressure on Scotland for the infant Mary Queen of Scots to marry Prince Edward of England. The English built a fort here in 1547 to intimidate the Scots, and it was the first fortification in Britain to be built in a Tres Italienne style, so named as it was similar to star-shaped forts built in Italy. These forts appeared when gunpowder cannons began to dominate warfare, and their shape eliminated firing blind spots, making them difficult to be overrun. The Scots didn't approve of the marriage and sought help from the French, as they had done many times throughout their history. In 1550, the Treaty of Boulogne stated that English troops must be withdrawn from Scotland, and the fort was demolished. When Mary was betrothed to Francis, the Dauphin of France, in 1557, the alliance between Scotland and France was strengthened and the castle was rebuilt. After France's involvement in the war with Italy and Spain, which ended in 1559, Imperial French wars concluded and the fort was demolished again for the final time.
That's why I'm doing it all on himself.
Well, that's it. Here we are back on the English border. The conclusion of the third and final part to this tour of Northumberland and the districts around. Hope you've enjoyed it, and maybe we'll see you another time. Goodbye for now.